Thanks in large part to a great performance by catcher Luis Torrens, the New York Mets were able to snap their 3-game losing streak on Saturday.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at JustBaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Saturday was a good day for the Mets. They got a victory. They got Edwin Diaz back. But it was a frustrating baseball game to watch, at least from where I was sitting on my couch, because there was so many missed opportunities offensively. And there was a few innings where the Mets were able to hold on pitching that got really scary. And it just felt like a team with the Mets that were trying not to lose instead of going for the win. That's just the read I had on it, where they were playing tight, they were playing nervous. And I understand it. They just got embarrassed the night before in Pittsburgh. They lost a couple of games in Washington to leave that series with a sour taste in their mouth. This is a point where every game matters at an extreme degree with the deadline looming. And this was a part of your schedule where everyone's expecting you to deliver. And sometimes that's harder than going and facing some really good teams and meeting that competition level. Not that the Pirates are a bad team. They're hanging in this wildcard race just like the Mets are, but they're not as good as that Astros team you just played recently, right? There's a big degree of separation between those two squads. You look at the lineup that this Pirates team has. If you don't hang so many pitches over the heart of the plate, they're not going to be hitting the home runs the way they have over the last couple of days here. So it's just been a frustrating exercise of watching the Mets go up against this Pirates team and not giving quite their best game because there was so many missed opportunities. Let's start with the first inning. Francisco Lindor leadoff single. Brandon Nimmo gets a base hit to put runners at first and third. Then Nimmo steals second. Second and third, nobody out. JD Martinez, Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos. You'd run that through a simulation 100 times. How many are going to come through where the Mets don't score a single run? I would expect not many, where you would think that either Martinez or Alonso could at least hit a fly ball and get a run in. JD Martinez popped out. Pete Alonso struck out. Mark Vientos struck out. Both runners were stranded. Second inning, Luis Torrens leadoff single. Tries to steal second. Thrown out. Right after that, Tyrone Taylor hits a double that would have scored him. That was a missed opportunity on the bases. There was another one in the fourth inning where Harrison Bader hit a double. On second with one out, tries to steal third, gets thrown out. Top of the lineup was up, Lindor and Nimmo. What did Nimmo get? 3 hits in this game? There's a chance if you just stay put after Lindor got out that Nimmo would have came through, got a knock, and you would have scored a run there. But instead, you run into an out. And Bader has done that too many times this year. Yes, he has 13 steals. He cuts the corners better than any base runner on this team. One of the fastest guys on the team. But he is overly aggressive, and it comes back to haunt him a lot. It's been thrown out 6 times, and that's just stealing bases. That doesn't count the amount of times he's been thrown out, trying to push the envelope, trying to have a hustle double, gets thrown out at second, tries to go first to third when he shouldn't. So he can be frustrating on the bases. Now, the Mets did score prior to Bader getting thrown out at third there. In the third inning, Luis Torrens made up for getting caught stealing himself, as the Mets were in a situation where they almost stranded the bases loaded. You had Lindor, Nimmo, and JD Martinez all get on to load the bases. Bailey Falter, the starting pitcher for the Pirates, gets hurt. He's pulled. You're into the bullpen in the third inning, and the Mets have an opportunity to just break this game wide open. And this comes on the heels of David Peterson pitching out of a bases loaded jam the inning prior, bottom of the second, where he gets 2 huge strikeouts that strand some runners, and you dodge a huge bullet. So this was an opportunity to grab the momentum of the game. And for a fleeting moment, it felt like the Mets were going to do exactly what the Pirates did and leave the bases loaded, stranded, and not score any runs. Luckily, Luis Torrens came through and he got a hit, because prior to that, when Dennis Santana came into the game, Pete Alonso and Mark Vientos each struck out. Torrens, bases clearing double. The Mets have 3 runs, and that was very much needed. Now, bottom of the fourth inning, David Peterson gives up a 2-run homer to Cruz. Bad pitch. Just left one that he was able to do a lot of damage on. Got way too much over the heart of the plate for Cruz. In the fifth inning, he gives up a single to Brian Reynolds, and that was after getting the first out, and then he's pulled. So the Mets are into the bullpen in the fifth inning, clinging to a 3-2 lead. Now, Budo comes on and is able to get out of that inning for Peterson, and then also gets through the sixth. Got a double play ball to erase a walk that he had in that sixth inning. Great work from Budo. 5 outs on 16 pitches. Love having him in the bullpen. And luckily, the Mets tacked on some runs in the top of the sixth inning as Mark Vientos and Luis Torrens each got base hits. And then Jose Iglesias doubled in Vientos. Harrison Bader sac fly to drive in Torrens. But from that point on, the Mets did not get another hit. So 5-2 game. Budo gets you through 6. Who felt comfortable with the Mets bullpen, even with Garrett, Nunez, and Diaz all rested to get through that game? Does anyone listen to this that is raising their hand or actually felt confident watching that game? You are a much stronger man than me, I guess, because I was nervous, particularly in the 7th inning. And I was frustrated too, because I don't know why they pulled Budo. I wanted to see Budo pitch the rest of that game, honestly. He was keeping the ball on the ground. That's what I wanted to see. But I think the Mets are maybe viewing Jose Budo as a guy that, can give them length at times, but also can be someone that can give them an inning or two. And you also don't know if they are looking at Christian Scott on Monday as maybe, a start on 4 days rest, but a limited pitch count. In which case, maybe you want to make sure you have Budo in the holster. We'll see what they do with Hauser if they can avoid pitching him. I'd imagine that was maybe part of it. And also, I think Mendoza just saw an opportunity with a lead and said, I'm going to go to my 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guys, because for the first time in God knows how long, he actually had a 7th, 8th, 9th inning plan. So he goes to Garrett, and Garrett just looked awful. I mean, he struck out O'Neill Cruz to lead off the inning, but gives up a base hit, walks 2 to load the bases. It was nowhere near the plate. And I'm just thinking, man, really? Reed Garrett can't just come through here. Luckily, he gets a line out where Francisco Lindor made an unbelievable catch and even a nicer flip to Jose Iglesias, where there was no out made on the force, but there was something about the way the two of them can play together up the middle that I just love. 2 guys with unbelievable hands where they're just having fun out there. So you see Lindor in that spot, bases loaded, make the catch, glove tosses it to Iglesias, who catch it, comes across the back. Obviously, everyone was safe. And then you had the biggest break of the game for the Mets. Jack Sawinski was up, bases loaded, 2 outs. And first pitch of that at bat, I believe, was about a foot under the zone, called the strike. 3-1 pitch, again, probably a foot under the zone, called a strike. And it was a bad strike zone the whole game, but particularly glaring in that big at bat where the Pirates should have had a run walked in, Garrett on the ropes, and instead he gets to stay in the at bat, full count, splitter to strike out Sawinski swinging, because obviously he wasn't going to trust keeping the bat on his shoulder at that point. And the Mets were able to escape. And then luckily the rest of the game was a little bit more quick and easy, as you had Daniel Nunez, who cruised through the 8th on, I think it was 8 pitches, 7 of them being strikes. And then Edwin Diaz came on. He passed the test of the sticky substance check. So he was good to go, allowed to pitch. He hits O'Neill Cruz in the foot, but strikes out Rowdy Tellez, gets a double play ball against McCutchen, 10 pitches to get his, 8th save of the season. Kind of crazy that's all he has, but that's what happens when you've struggled and you've been hurt and now suspended. And the New York Mets are able to hold on to win 5-2, and hopefully the pressure is off a little bit and they have an opportunity to come back and win this series. You got to win the next 2 here, but you definitely feel a lot better about the state of the bullpen with Diaz in place, and now just breaking out of that 3-game losing streak. Hopefully the tide has turned for your Mets. But a big reason for the tide turning on this season has been the play of the Mets catchers. Torrens had a great game today, and I want to talk about what that duo with their backstop has meant for this team, from Torrens to Alvarez. They've all of a sudden been the best catching tandem in baseball, and I can't tell you the last time that's happened for the Mets, but I'm going to try to, so we'll talk about all of that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop, but as the playoffs have winded down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want, because all I have to do is open the app, dream up my bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. If you are an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime some news breaks on the Mets. You can also ask me questions anytime. You get these starting lineups sent to your phone each day in a graphic, so you don't have to go on social media to see who is in the starting nine. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Since Luis Torrens got signed by the Mets, and since Alvarez came back, this team has had the best catching tandem in all of baseball. And I was curious, when's the last time the Mets have even had a top 10 catching situation in the game for a season? So I went to Fangraphs, I sorted by team stats, and I looked at two stats in particular: wins above replacement and WRC plus. So wins above replacement, all-encompassing stat to tell you how valuable a player has been. WRC plus, all-encompassing offensive stat that measures hitters on a league average of 100. And Fangraphs goes all the way back to 2002. So I went through 20 plus years of Mets baseball. The first time when the Mets got even close to top 10 in either category was 2016, as I was going from 2023 all the way down. So 2016, they were 11th in F4, 26th in WRC plus. So that tells you good defense, not a lot of offense. Travis d'Arnaud was one of the catchers. He was hurt for a lot of the year. It was Rene Rivera and Kevin Plawecki was the main catching tandem. 2015, the Mets were 10th in F4, 17th in WRC plus. Again, you had Kevin Plawecki, you had Travis d'Arnaud, and then you had Anthony Recker. Then you have a huge gap. 2007 was the next time where they were top 10 in either category, and it was WRC plus. They had a good offensive season. From their backstops, they were 10th at 84, which means even though they had a good offensive season compared to the league, it was still below average based on just normal hitters, but still decent enough offensively. They were 18th in F4. That was Paul LaDuca and Ramon Castro. 2005, they were 7th in WRC plus. They led the league in home runs, three-way tie across a couple teams, and they were 13th in F4. Who do you think caught for the Mets that year? That was Mike Piazza's last year with the Mets. So still a good offensive threat there. They weren't quite in the top 10 for wins above replacement. His backup was Ramon Castro. Now, 2004, the Mets were 10th in F4, wins above replacement, 9th in WRC plus. Same exact thing in 2003. And then you go back to 2002, they had the best catching situation in baseball, first in wins above replacement, first in WRC plus. That was Mike Piazza in his prime. If Fangraphs went before that, I'm sure the Mets would have ranked close to number one in both categories in 2001, 2000, 99, 98, because that was when Mike Piazza was clearly the best catcher in baseball as part of his Hall of Fame career. But you really, like when people say that Francisco Alvarez is the best catcher the Mets have had since Mike Piazza, that's not hyperbole. This franchise has been stuck in the doldrums at this position for 2+ decades, where they have not had a above average all around catcher in a very long time. And offensively, I mean, they haven't had a 4 since Piazza for sure. So Alvarez does give you hope. And you hope that also at third base, Mark Vientos can, get the Mets at third base to a spot where that position is solidified. And it's not as long of a layover between David Wright and the next good Mets third baseman. I mean, Vientos is giving you as good as baseball as you've seen at that position since, I guess, Todd Frazier. But, I mean, really, again, when you lose a franchise icon, whether it's retirement, trade, whatever it is, it's hard to fill that void because, I think naturally when you have a guy like Piazza behind the dish or David Wright at third base, you're not always going to be looking for the prospects at those positions for some time, right? So you're not scouting as well at those spots. You're not drafting as well, and it leaves a void. But it has been a long, long road for the Mets to have a good catching situation. So now they've had the best in baseball, though, since May 31st when Luis Torrens was signed by the Mets, poached from the Yankees for nothing but cash. Since then, the combination of Alvarez, Torrens, and a little splash of Tomas Nido is leading Major League Baseball in wins above replacement at 1.8. I think the next best team was at 1.2, and that's not even including Torrens' performance in this game today, where he went 3 for 4, drove in 3 runs, scored a run. So it's only going to get better. Again, without those stats, the combination of Alvarez and Torrens, and again, a splash of Nido, a 166 WRC plus, 66% better than your league average hitter. Not even just your league average catcher, your league average hitter. And that is by far the best mark in all of baseball for a team. They're hitting 304 from that position, 373 on base, 563 slug, 6 home runs, 9 doubles, 1 triple, 21 RBIs. Francisco Alvarez alone trails only Kyle Higashioka in F4 and in WRC plus since the end of May. Now, the funny thing about that is Higashioka was a Yankee catcher, traded in the Juan Soto deal, part of the package that went back. And Torrens also Yankee catcher. Now, I will say, because I was looking up and I wanted to make the case that the Yankees are just brutal at this because their catching situation has been horrendous. Austin Wells and Jose Trevino during this same time period have been above average catchers. They've been good defensively, and Wells has been good offensively. Not as good as Torrens, but still good. Trevino's a black hole offensively, but he's really good with the glove. I'm not going to begrudge the Yankees too much, but it is pretty crazy the production the Mets have gotten out of Torrens, who's hit 270, and this is, again, before the game today. So I can actually, let me pull up his slash line with the game today because it's just going to look that much better. But I'll tell you in the meantime that Francisco Alvarez, 338, 413, 600. So that's 338 batting average, 413 on base, 600 slug, OPS over 1,000. He was out of the game today because he got hit on the arm with that pitch from Paul Skeens on Friday, but he went back out there and caught Edwin Diaz to make sure he'd be comfortable in the 9th inning. So that shows you that the Mets avoided the worst with Alvarez. Now, after the game today, where he went 3 for 4, Torrens is hitting 317, 364 on base, 610 slug, so 974 OPS in 15 games. Now, Alvarez's numbers on the season aren't as good as Torrens, but his numbers since coming back from injury are better. That just shows you how good the catching position has been for the Mets. They have not gotten offense like this from the catcher spot since Mike Piazza, and their defense between these two guys is probably better than Piazza back in those days. Unbelievable stuff. And if this can continue, it's only going to help this team really play above their heads a little bit, probably throughout the rest of this year, because these guys are getting more out of these pitchers at times than I think you would see otherwise, particularly Alvarez with Jose Quintana and Sean Manaea. I'm sure Alvarez will be back behind the dish on Sunday to catch Manaea. And Torrens with his arm has really stabilized the Mets when it comes to controlling the running game, which was a huge problem when you had Omar Narvaez and Nido and Alvarez back there at the beginning of the season. Alvarez still hasn't been great with his arm, but he's unbelievable leader back there, pitch framer, all that good stuff. So we'll see if this can continue throughout the rest of the year. Obviously, at this rate, it cannot, but I still think both of these guys can continue to be above average on both sides of the ball, and that just bodes really well for you. And when it comes to Torrens, the interesting part about it, the Mets can hold on to him. This is not a one-year contract. He's ARB eligible for the next 2 years. The Mets can hang on to this guy as their backup catcher through 2026. So a huge find to get Torrens on this team, and I hope that he can stay for the next couple of years and just be Francisco Alvarez's backup. I think that'd be a perfect situation for this team. Now, can they keep the winning rolling on Sunday? I want to talk about that game as well as the addition of Eric Orze to the bullpen. So we're going to go through all that in just a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here with Locked On Mets, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season's over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, can even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. You can also see the link in the episode description below. If you want to stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Now, we've talked about this game on Sunday throughout the last couple of shows, not knowing who would pitch for the Pittsburgh Pirates as Jared Jones hit the IL. We now know that Luis Ortiz will get the start. Ortiz has been a reliever throughout this season, but he's been their bulk guy. 55 innings out of the bullpen, a 3.27 ERA. And in June, he was in a pseudo starter role. He had 3 straight relief appearances where he pitched 4 or more innings. And then he got a start where he went 6 innings on 85 pitches on June 26th against the Reds, allowed 1 run, and struck out 7. He also had a relief appearance before that at 79 pitches. His most recent appearance on July 2nd was a 2-inning spurt of 30 pitches. So I don't expect him to have 100 pitches in the tank. He might not even have 85, but at least 60 to 80, somewhere in that range. Ortiz can give the Pirates some length in this game, but it's up to the Mets to really wear him down and get into that bullpen that was already tasked with covering a lot of innings in this prior game on Saturday. So the Mets should have its Pirates team on the ropes a little bit. This is the game you got to get, because on Monday, it'll be Mitch Keller going for the Pirates against Christian Scott. We still don't know if there's any, parameters on Scott's start, whether it's a pitch count or an innings limit. We really don't know. We don't know if he's just full on ready to go, 100 pitches again. We'll see. So you got to grab this game on Sunday. Also, if you want to win the series, you got to grab the game. And I'll be interested to see what Sean Manaea does. Really good start last time. Can he build off that? Can he give this team length again? That would be huge, because the Mets used their A guys on Saturday to get the win. They used Diaz, Garrett, and Nunez. Now, with that said, Diaz threw 10 pitches. He's had 10 days of rest. I'm sure he'll be good to go. Nunez needed just 8 pitches, 7 strikes to get through that inning. I'd imagine you could throw Nunez again. Garrett, 26 pitches. He's probably burned. Budo, 16 pitches, but I doubt they're going to pitch him back-to-back days. So I'd expect he's probably burned. Then I also, like I mentioned earlier, think they might want to hold on to him and see if he can give them 2 innings after Christian Scott potentially on Monday. So I don't expect him to pitch. Adam Ottavino is fresh. Adrian Hauser can probably go. And then you have Eric Orze, who was added to the bullpen on Saturday, called up in place of Ty Adcock, and he is now awaiting to make his MLB debut. Orze was drafted by the Mets in 2020 in the 5th round. He's 26 years old, has a nasty splitter with a fastball and a slider that he can mix in. He had an ERA over 5 in AAA the last couple of years, but this year he pitched really well, particularly in June, where he had a 1.69 ERA and 17 strikeouts in 10 2/3 innings pitched. Has a 3.76 ERA down there this season. So he's an interesting arm. The Mets brass has sort of been talking him up lately as a guy that they have some high hopes in, and maybe he's the next Daniel Nunez that you find, a young arm with explosive stuff that can actually stick in this bullpen, and that would be very much needed. Right now, you're looking at this bullpen, and you got Diaz, Garrett, and Nunez. All right, you feel pretty good about that. Adam Ottavino has pitched better as of late. Budo and Hauser are so crucial right now to have these starters as relievers helping you with these middle innings after pitchers go short, giving you that length. That's been really big. That could be the group for the rest of the season, those 6. Those 6 could be stabilizing forces that you just roll with. The question is going to be, what do you do with those last 2 spots? So Orze's got his chance here to maybe grab one of them. And then you still have Sean Reed-Foley, who could make his way back from injury. You have Jake Diekman, who I hope gets DFA'd soon. And then you have Shintaro Fujinami, who I spent a lot of time on yesterday's show. I had some people in the comments on YouTube, I think maybe even Twitter as well, mentioning the fact that he's on the 60-day IL. I did not discuss that part of it. It really didn't even cross my mind. I was thinking he could just come into the fold. I never did the math on it. And then I got my mind mixed into a pretzel today because I looked up retroactive, IL rules on the 60-day IL, and I couldn't find anything. And I was honestly just boggling my mind. I still never found a clear answer from the internet, honestly. But from my own personal memory, if a guy is placed on the 60-day IL, he just has to spend 60 days on the injury list. It doesn't have to be from when he got put on the 60-day IL, because Kodai Senga, for example, was on the 15-day IL to start the season, and then they moved him to the 60. That wasn't adding 60 days on his IL stint. It was just 60 days that he has to spend on the IL. So with that said, I believe that it's just 60 days that he has to serve since he was recalled to the Mets, because at one point Fujinami, of course, was in Syracuse. He was injured down there. They added him to the big league roster just to put him on the big league IL. And what that basically set them up to do was to sort of manipulate things, not like Billy Epler, but take advantage of the situation that he was on the 40-man roster. He was hurt. He wasn't going to be back for some time. And so they were able to eventually transfer him to the 60-day IL, which took place, I think it was June 5th. And that freed up a 40-man spot when they needed one. Now, though, he has served, I believe this is his 55th day on the IL on Sunday. So he should be able to come back next weekend. I said on yesterday's show, I don't expect him to enter this bullpen until maybe after the All-Star break. I think if the Mets had their druthers, they would stick with what they got right now. Hopefully Orze can stick. I don't know if they're going to cut Diekman anytime in the foreseeable future until maybe they get a Fujinami back or a Sean Reed-Foley back. And I think both of those might not happen until after the All-Star break. You also have Montes de Oca, who could come back into the fold as well. I think he gave up another run in Syracuse on Saturday. So we'll see what happens there. But the bottom line, the Mets have Diaz back. I think they have some solid options with Garrett Nunez, Budo Hauser, and maybe even Adam Ottavino. So this bullpen, all of a sudden, with your anchor back, hopefully will be a stable force. And I'm excited to see Orze pitch potentially on Sunday or Monday here. See what he has on a big league mound for the first time. He's got a great story if you don't know about him. He's gone through a lot of adversity to get to this point. Prior to being drafted, I think it was both skin and testicular cancer, and he's been in remission now. And obviously has been in the Mets organization since getting drafted, but it was a tough road for him through college to get to that point where he got drafted by the Mets, and they bet on him and his upside. And clearly it has paid off since he's made it up to the show here. And we'll see. He might be a guy that sticks around for a long time, or maybe he's just one of these guys that'll shuttle up and down. But it seems like there's a little more optimism here with Orze compared to some of the other arms they've called on. This is a younger kid who's got good stuff. His strikeout numbers have always been there in the minor leagues. It's been about controlling his walks, getting that strike zone intact, and they feel like he's there. He's ready. So we'll see him get tested on the biggest stage. It should be a lot of fun whenever we get to see his MLB debut. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you who tuned into the show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to make a push to 9,000 subs before the All-Star break. We're within 100, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. If you're listening on the audio side, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to follow me on social media, you can do so at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that covers everything in the world of sports with our local experts from each team and our league-wide experts from each league. If I Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV.